Hello everybody and welcome to Case Management Practice 2. This is the first video of the assessment processes for this course, and this video is designed to give you some understanding of how to approach the assessments and how to relate that to the learning for the course. So let's start with trying to find out where we are on the page so you understand what's happening. We're here on this page. On the front of the page, you will have already been in the assessment forum where you've accessed this video. In terms of accessing other information, we need to understand that if we go to the subject central area here and open that up, you'll be able to see where to get the subject and assessment guide, and that will give you information about the assessments. And here's a list of the assessments you need to complete for the Case Management Practice 2 course. First one is mandatory reporting duty of care this week, and it's due in week 6. And we're going to start with this other assessment. There are other ones where we've got our case clients, our case study client, Lily Chen and her 2 children, and we'll be looking at that for assessment 2. Part A, you'll need to complete client assessment forms, case management plan for part B, and short answer questionnaires for part C. And then in assessment 3 during week 10, you need to attend a practical assessment workshop where you will be taking part in a case coordination conference where we're thinking about our case study client Lily Chen and her children, and we'll be working in different roles to look at how a case conference occurs between the client and the case managers, the Child Protection Service, whatever they are called, and various other ancillary support agencies under a brokerage case management model. So there might be an educational liaison officer, there might be a support person, there might be a drug and alcohol worker, there might be some other participants in the meeting where you will role play going through a process of working with Lily Chen some months into her support arrangements with you. And then finally, part B is some brief responses where you'll be talking about case closure and how to understand the procedure from the perspective of the workers and the clients themselves, and what responsibilities people have in different regards to closing the case down at the end, and what referrals might be made. So there are basic assessments for this course. Let's start with assessment 1. We need to go to the templates for assessments folder. So let's open this up. In the templates for assessments folder, you'll find all of the templates where you can download the template, and this will help you to find questions that you're required to answer for this course. So it's easy enough to do this. So let's have a look at that. We've opened one up here already. I don't think that's the one. Let me just open that. And here we are in the templates for assessments again. Sorry, got lost a bit there. So let's open these templates for assessments up so you can see where we are. So this is a template for assessment. It's a submission form for Case Management 2, Assessment 1, Mandatory Reporting. Start here, put your name and your number down, put your student name down, and make sure you save that. At the top, you'll see it's got student name here, save under student name. Well, as a student name, can you save that under your name? So when you upload it, it's clear who wrote this. It's due in week 6. It's for trimester 2 of 2018. And in this document, we've got some 3 parts to this assessment. Assessment 1 is about Judith, the 15-year-old girl who has experienced a rape. She's homeless. She's got some medical needs, and she's come into your community centre, and your job is to work with Judith on helping address her needs as a client who's come into your service. And the first thing you do is to go online. And go to the mandatory reporting area and complete a mandatory report for Judith. So after you've done that, we're going to save a copy of the mandatory report by generating a PDF and save that into your computer, because you need to upload that with this assessment document as well. In section 2, we'll go to section 2 later, which will talk a little bit more about Judith's mandatory report. But for the time being, why don't we go to the mandatory reporting area? Oh, wrong one there. We are in the mandatory reporting guide here. This is for New South Wales, so let's just be aware that different services have different mandatory reporting requirements, different states, and New South Wales will be basing this assessment on the New South Wales one. This is called a decision tree, and under the decision tree you can see we've got a number of fields here. Our case study, Judith, has suffered from a rape, and that's sexual abuse, so we're going to look at sexual abuse and choose that and select that, and there's some details there. If you're not sure which one, if you follow that down, you can find out what the different terminology is referring to. It's more specific, but we are talking about Judith and sexual abuse. We're going to do this, we're going to go through this, and you need to go through and identify which is correct here. On the right here, some definitions. So under A, please choose the sexual abuse concern for the child or young person. So it defines what is a child, what's a young person, what's the problematic sexual behaviour, and that talks about these areas here. We're choosing Judith is here. For all of these decisions, you will have options to understand the definitions here. They explain. Sexual abuse has been made, a direct statement has been made to you. Yes, it has. You're not aware that a child has been abused, even sure that they haven't told you, but they have told you, so we're going to say no. We are aware because the person told us. Are you aware of an underage marriage? No, we're not, and we're going to move through this. You've just provided some other concerns. Do you have other concerns? We do. So if we say yes, and we're going to be asked to complete a little field here. So we're going to write, basically, we're going to go through Maslow's hierarchy of needs, consider the bottom rung of hierarchy of needs. Judith's walked into the center. She's complained of bleeding from the rape, so she's got medical needs. We'll write this down, medical. Now, you can be more detailed about this, but we're just going to make a note for the purposes of this video. She's homeless as well, so we'll write that down, homeless. She's been raped, so she's going to have some emotional support needs. She's under the age of 16, so she really needs to be reconciled with her family, unless there's a history of abuse there, for example. So we're going to put reconciliation down because we believe that that might be a probable, oh, spelled that wrong, reconciliation with one L, and some other material aid needs. She might need some clothes, she might need some shelter, etc. We'll put homeless, so she'll need shelter. Now, emotional support needs, she's probably going to need sexual assault resources, sexual assault counselling, and really a hostel or a refuge for victims of domestic violence and sexual assault would be an ideal place. But if you can't find that, you have to find something else, and you would need to go through directories to find that. And then we're going to say next. Existence of other concerns. We're not aware that there's a teacher who's preying on a school of children, or if the person's come in and said, my father is abusing everybody in the family, for example. So we're not aware of that. So I'm going to say no. There's not a class of young people we're worried about. But by class, it doesn't mean just teachers in schools. It can be anybody where there is a recidivist abuse occurring from a perpetrator. And then here's our report. We've come to our final report. Notice up here it says generate PDF. So save that, generate a PDF, save that into your folders, because you need to upload that with this assessment. Here's the decision, the final decision. Immediate report to the Child Protection Helpline. Please click and create the report. Phone or phone. So please click the create report so we can create the e-report here, and that gets registered. So what happens is this information is then listed, and we need to have other details when we speak to people. So what's the name and address, date of birth, contact details, incident details, Judith was wrecked in a park, etc. She's been suffering some medical need, the impact of the incident on the young person. You could be saying, well, they seem quite resilient considering they've just experienced a rape, or they're really totally emotionally distraught and they need immediate support, counselling, they need some emotional support from people who they trust, that sort of thing. Is there a network of support that you can rely on? She's homeless, so you might argue no, but then you'd need to find out these details with Judith, and you might want to start this, if Judith's in any fit state to do that, on the way to the hospital, or while you're waiting for support in the hospital. But again, that might not be the right thing to do. And is there any interpreter, language requirements, etc.? This is the main thing. So the main concern, sexual abuse, this is important. This is the decision tree has come to this, and there are these additional comments. You'll need to copy and paste these into your assessment. And so, as I said, generate the PDF, save the PDF, upload the PDF as evidence that you've done this. And then we're going to go back to our assessment form, and we're going to answer some questions about this with Judith. The relevant decision tree has been selected. That is, we go back to our, we're back on the decision tree, so copy and paste. Below is a summary of your MRG, yeah? And immediate report, yes, MRG, final decision, immediate report. So copy and paste these answers into here. Doesn't matter if you copy and paste, sorry, wrong one, here. Doesn't matter if you copy and paste, as long as the words are correct, it's fine. The MRG contains detailed information relevant to the case study. Correct, put that in there. Again, copy and paste that, that's the, that's this bit. Additional comments, that's the additional comments are in here. Significant indicators have been identified. So indicators are a rape of a young person has occurred, and again, you can copy and paste. The child's made a clear and ambiguous statement of sexual assault. You can just copy and paste. There's no requirement to rewrite a book. You don't have to write huge paragraphs. You just need to identify what the information is. Don't just write yes. Intervention strategies are, 1, address medical needs. So we're going to do that. Go to hospital, address medical needs. Then we're going to refer to sexual assault support services. Then we're going to discuss the options for reconciliation with the family. If that's not appropriate, we're going to consider other trusted family members who will be able to provide emotional support for Judith. And then if that's, as a last resort, if that is not available, we're going to think about some other option, like making sure there's counselling available in any support, residential support option that we're providing to Judith. We'd certainly be looking at a single overnight stay as a very last resort. We'd be wanting to give Judith a little bit of housing stability at the moment. So 2 months would be perfect in the right location. You know, it might not be available, so as far as possible, you've got to go. But because Judith's been really emotionally traumatized, you want to be providing her with some immediate respite as soon as possible. So she's in hospital. You need to set up some material aids for her. She might need some clothes. She might want to have a shower. She might need some food as well. You might want to give her some chocolate bars and things like that, just to make her feel somewhat normal and respected. You certainly want to consider her respect, and you never accuse her of being in any way responsible, even though she's sleeping out. It's been a bad choice that she's made, but you know, that's not an invitation for anyone to sexually abuse her, and that was never taken as that way. So you never intimate that whatsoever. So let's move on. Who would you report to? Well, we'd report to, back again to this, immediately report to Child Protection Helpline. That's who you would report to. So back on here, what would be the grounds? That, again, copy and paste. Judith has claimed to be raped. How would you make the report? You would do it by phone. How quickly would you need to make the report? As soon as possible, within 24 hours, say that, because you'd be dealing with Judith first off. The reporting is the final responsibility. If you went to the hospital, the doctors would have called the police anyway, and the police would make that report, but everybody needs to be belt and braces on this one. You have a dual approach to making sure it's reported. How could you find services to refer Judith to? Well, if you don't know, you'd need to deal with networks. You might call your manager. You might look in Google for sexual assault support services for young people. You might have a youth agency in the region you can call upon. If you don't know, you might know of a women's domestic violence refuge, for example. As a last resort, that might be an ideal place to keep Judith overnight. There might be people who could support her there, not the clients, of course, the staff, as well as it being resourced to deal with her coming into the service having experienced some emotional trauma and physical abuse. So they'd be very well resourced to deal with that. So if you, as a last resort, you know, look on Google if you don't know. Discuss how the case study has informed you. So I don't know, that's not something I can answer. That's something for your own words. What have you learned about this process? What do you think? Is there anything that surprised you? Is there things that you think should be included in this process that haven't been? So answer that in that way, in your own words. If Judith was 17 years of age, would the same thing apply? Answer, yes, of course. She's under the age of 18. She's still strictly a child. Anybody under the age of 18 that reports being sexually abused gets a mandatory reporting responsibility, and you follow that through. Right, that's part A. Part B, let's have a look at part B. In part B, you consider the risk of harm leading to the following case study complete questions below. So Kate is a juvenile justice worker. She's got a client, Amy, who's 14 years old. Amy's an Aboriginal person from a background which is not really made clear. Is she with her family? Is she alone? Don't know. She's hanging out with a guy called Ali, who is a 28-year-old guy who's involved with drugs, and he's invited her to participate in taking pornographic photographs, which she has done. There's no discussion of sexual activity beyond the pornographic photography, and it's unclear whether there's any sexual relationship. So let's have a look at what are the issues here regarding Amy's well-being and safety. Well, definitely she's at risk of being sexually abused further because she's already been invited to take part in paedophilic pornographic activity. So you would imagine that is part of a grooming process that is likely to result in the invitation for sexual activity to occur. If it's not with Ali, then it might be with somebody else. That's not any better. But it might be in relation to their work together, their intimate relations together. Also, she's exposed to being involved with drugs and other lifestyles. And as she's involved, Kate is a juvenile justice worker. Imagine Kate is involved with Amy in relation to another matter where she's been involved in criminal activities, unlawful activities. So Kate would be trying to keep her off that. And being involved with a drug dealer, she'd likely to be more exposed to unlawful activity than less exposed. So basically, more sexual abuse, drugs, and unlawful activity, and being led away from doing things like education. What other additional information would she need from Amy? Well, let's find out who are Amy's supports, what's happening in her family, who is taking care of her at home, how is she making these decisions without having anybody overseeing that? So what's happening with her parenting? Who's Ali? What's his name? What's his details? What sort of cars he drives? Where's he hang out? This is information for you to give to the police. And what is Amy interested in? Because you want to try and build some rapport with Amy. So let's talk about what she's interested in. You don't necessarily need that information before making a report. By the way, so the answer to that is we don't need any information whatsoever to make a report. So you can actually answer that with no information required. But there's other information you could get if you're a responsible worker. But no information just to make a report, because the idea that she has been taking photographs of a sexual nature, pornography, child pornography, that is a reportable offence. So that's it. You would call the police as well about that. And therefore, you need to have that other information as far as possible, because it'd be great to get Ali away from Amy. What cultural considerations would you need to address when working with Amy in the scenario? Well, Has she got any Aboriginal families? Because our Aboriginal communities can be very supportive, and they might operate in different ways, and they might have a different frame of how they support young people, and you might need to be aware of what her Aboriginality is about. Does she identify as Aboriginal? Does she have any involvement with Aboriginal communities? Does she have Aboriginal elders that she can turn to? And might you want to share some discussion with them about her involvement, etc., etc. What skills would you need? Communication skills, build rapport, micro communication skills, talking to Amy, unconditional positive regard, active listening, allowing Amy to talk without being judged, being respectful towards Amy, helping her to ask herself how she's feeling about some of these things, and also being able to challenge Amy as well on certain things. Like, Amy, have you seen what happens on the internet where pictures of young children are posted, and how that can be very detrimental to people's reputations and how they feel about themselves, that sort of thing. So those sorts of questions are very useful to be able to pose. So having skills to do that, micro communication skills, very important. What information would you provide to Amy to inform her? Well, you've got two things here. You've got a duty of care, and then you've got a code of ethics, which says client confidentiality. You're not a doctor, you're not a lawyer, and you are not a priest. There's no legal requirement for you to maintain confidentiality, but there's an ethical discussion you might have said to Amy. But there's the disclosure, which is, if you disclose to me information which demonstrates that you're being harmed, or that other people are being harmed by this information, I might have to report that to somebody. And it would be up to you what you said to Amy. But as Amy is only 14, you don't necessarily have to be 100% honest with Amy about everything, because let's face it, we're adults. And if giving Amy the full truth is going to help Amy disappear and for this abuse to continue, what's a better way to go? Breach your confidentiality ethical agreement with Amy, or breach your duty of care towards Amy, which is to protect her from sexual abuse. This is the conflict that we all have as workers. So plan B is the answer. Don't breach your duty of care, breach your ethical if you need to. Where you can, tell her the truth. Why not? Considering risk of harm, complete the following questions. What would be the grounds and reasons for your report? Child pornography and at risk of further exploitation and exposure to sexual activity, drugs, alcohol, and criminal activity. How would you make the report? Well, fill in the mandatory reporting tree to start with, and then follow the responses there. How quickly would you make the report? As soon as possible. Part C. A final case study. This is a case study of you are a case manager for a health services unit working for the elderly. You've been asked to investigate possible situations of elder abuse. Your two clients, Alan and Patricia, are residents of Lonsdale Nursing Home, and they've been there for 6 months. Their daughter Lisa has referred them to you. They're claimed to have been abused. Since that claim has been made, there's evidence that there's some lack of care in terms of not being showered, and there's bruising on their arms. And since that point, Patricia has committed suicide by taking an overdose of medication. So we've got a pattern building here, but let's think about it. So you're a case manager, health service, you're investigating an allegation made by the daughter of somebody in care. And since that point, you've got how many victims? There's a history of mention, but that's not 100% clear. You'd need to investigate that. There's Alan and Patricia themselves as residents of the home, and some bruising. Is that on both of them? Are they both, see if both of them experience the same thing, then that might be clear. And if they're not being showered, that might be a thing, that might not be a thing, given the funding for the nursing home. It's a nursing home, so nursing homes tend to be the very last stop for older people, as opposed to supported accommodation. Nursing homes require quite intensive care for older people. If they're being neglected, that's important. So, but it all depends on the nursing home and how it's run, etc., etc. And so you're investigating this. The daughter might be somewhat guilty about having put a family in care, so you've got to maybe take that with a pinch of salt, but you have a responsibility to investigate. So what is your duty of care in relation to the situation? You have a responsibility to investigate the allegations of of abuse against Alan and in relation to Patricia, and you would need to contact the police if you felt that you thought there was some unlawful activity going here. What legislations apply? Now, in your documentation, let me just point out, there's not a lot of information for you to go on this course, but there is some. So let's go back to the course here. Let me point out where you can find some information. In week 1, under other documents, you'll find a document that gives you information about duty of care, elder abuse, compulsory reporting here. If you go on Google, mandatory reporting for elder abuse in Australia, you can find websites like this. My Aged Care here, elder abuse concerns, and there's a list of services with each state where you can get information about the rights for older people and elder abuse. But there is a duty of care that is required. There's a legal framework that is not listed here. So if we go to the elder abuse document, you'll find that listed in here. Let's open that up. The legislation for, and that's also in week 2, you'll find this in week 1 and week 2. There's a 2007 compulsory reporting of abuse of children introduced by the government, the Aged Care Act 2007. Now, that's for unlawful sexual contact, residents of a nursing home, unreasonable use of force. But you only would need to suspect that it's true in order to report it. Who would you report it to? Well, they're adults, so you'd report it to the police, and you might need to follow up if there is a register for your state, which there probably isn't, because not all states have got registers. So that's an interesting little turnabout you might not know about. But that's another thing. Older people are usually able to refer to any lawful, unlawful activity in terms of the law for common assault. If they've been assaulted by somebody, physically beaten or hurt, or if they're neglected in their care, that's the Aged Care Act, or if they're sexually abused as well. And so you can refer to those legislations as well to make a formal complaint that somebody's been a victim of sexual abuse by somebody who has been caring for them. And again, that document talks about the responsibilities of the nursing staff that are working with older people. So what support service would you suggest for the daughter and other family members? Well, you could call up that hotline that hotline link that I gave you here, call them up and refer them there. But also you might want some counselling for the children and for their parents, the older people who are in the nursing home care. They might not be in a cognitive state to be able to engage in counselling, but they might be. You might need some other assistance from other agencies that can provide in-home support. Because they're in nursing home care, I'm not saying that's going to be likely, because that's a pretty much 100% physical response thing. But you might need to get some legal services as well for people if there is an evidence of a physical or sexual abuse or elder abuse of any kind, to take legal action. So counselling, legal action, and emotional support for so for example, there might be a carers support network, for example, or a young families of victims of elder abuse support network, for example, and they might be able to link you in with more resources. Oh dear, we shouldn't have done that. Let's go back here. Oh, we've lost our pattern of we're in here. Okay, in fact, we need to go back to this question here. Oh dear, I've done it again. Let's go back. Okay. Identify what support services you. Oh, we've done that one. Suggest this scenario suggests a complex case. Identify and describe what model of case management might be appropriate for immediate and future intervention. Okay, so it's a complex case. So there's two things you might want to do. You've got to think about a brokerage model of case management where you, as a case manager, consider arranging services. You're not going to be a primary carer. You're not going to be providing those services yourself. You're an investigator. You're an investigator, and your job is to link them with correct services. So that's a brokerage model of case management. That's what that's called. And then you also might want to think about the approach as a caseworker that you're taking, and that would be the rights-based approach, where you're assisting the clients to enjoy their full rights as your clients, to be supported within their rights. Okay, so a brokerage model of case management and a rights-based approach to case management. And finally, what would be the funding implications for the nursing home should they be found negligent? Well, they could lose their funding. Right, that brings us to the end of this assessment video, and we'll be back in the future for more assessment videos. Thanks very much for listening. Take care. Bye.